I'm going to go ahead and put on my cynical view glasses for this one, because this is going to be quite a cynical review of Venom, and I'm also tired, so I look like shit. This will make me look slightly better for this harsh criticism of the film. And fair warning, this video is going to have a lot of spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film and you're planning on seeing it, then you might not want to watch this straight away, but it's up to you. So Venom just came out. Of course, it was directed by Ruben Fleischer and starred Tom Hardy as the titular villain slash hero. More hero in this adaptation, Venom and Eddie Brock. Now, the first thing I really noticed about this film before it even started was that it was produced by Avi Arad. Now, he's one of the guys involved in Marvel, and if you know anything about Avi Arad, you're probably going to realise from the get-go that this film isn't going to be great. Now, I'm not trying to offend Avi Arad with that, he's produced a lot of different films, a lot of Marvel films especially, and in their day, they were good. If you think about Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, maybe not Spider-Man 3, those are some good films, and for their time, they were really good. But by today's standards, they're subpar at best, and Venom has that exact same problem. Now, if this Venom film had been released right after Spider-Man 3, or right after Spider-Man 2, because Spider-Man 3 was a twisted abomination, then yeah, people probably would have went, oh, that's fantastic, that's just as good as Spider-Man 2, that's amazing. But when you compare it to the movies we've got now, and you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, how good pretty much all of those movies are, and there's 20 movies, there's 19 movies, and every single one of them is really good. Compared to that, I would say Venom isn't as good as any one of those MCU movies, and it's just so stuck in the past, it's unreal. And we're not even getting into the actual kind of plot or anything like that so far, but I think the actual biggest thing that I kind of realised is that what your Marvel Cinematic Universe movies are doing now is that they're essentially taking stories from the comic books, for the most part, and, changing them a little bit, changing a few details to make them fit into the MCU. Of course, if you look at Infinity War, everything in that is pretty much what happens in the comics. Of course, there's different characters, it happens a wee bit differently, but overall, the main story is something that actually happened in the comic books, and when you do it like that, you're taking an existing story that's already popular, people already love, and just turning it into a movie, and so it's fantastic. What Venom does is what your old Marvel movies used to do. If you look at Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, maybe not Spider-Man as much, because that wasn't too bad, but if you look at a lot of other Marvel movies, what they did was they took the characters, took your Spider-Man, and then pick a villain or a couple of villains, and then just write whatever movie you want. They don't take a comic book story and adapt it. They maybe take some of their background stuff and, do some of the obvious stuff, but they don't actually just take a story and adapt it into a movie, because that's the easiest thing in the world to do, but they just don't do it. With this Venom film, they took a bunch of stuff that's sort of loosely tied to the character of Venom and just wrote a script around it, which didn't give us anything special at all. I would say what really hampered this film in particular is that it just has absolutely no ties to Spider-Man whatsoever. Now, in recent times, Venom has become, a character in his own right. He's got his own stories, he's got his own motivations and all of that, which is great. But when it comes to his origins, the powers he has, his motivations for doing what he does at the start, they're just not there. And the film makes a very conscious effort to not reference Spider-Man at all. They don't reference Spider-Man, they don't reference anything else that's going on in the MCU. It's a bit bizarre. Even Tom Hardy, there's a scene where he has to go into the Life Foundation building, and he's going down the lift with the doctor that stuck him in. And she's talking about the symbiotes, and she's talking about aliens and stuff like that, and he's all like, aliens? which, okay, it's fine as when it's a standalone thing. If we didn't know this was a Marvel film, but we know this is a Marvel film. If someone's huffing and hawing and saying, "Huff, aliens, that's so stupid," that makes no sense, because if it is part of the MCU, or even loosely, aliens are a thing. Thanos has come to Earth. New York was attacked by an armada of crazy alien space monsters. So, what's his surprise all about? It's a small thing, but it just highlights the fact that it's so disconnected from everything else that's going on just now. It just kind of makes it a bit pointless. Because while Venom has his own stories and everything now, if he's not part of the Marvel Universe, then he's not part of anything. He's just this random alien thing that happens to be on Earth, which is stupid. Now, I'll give credit to Tom Hardy. You know, he's a good actor. He did a fairly good job with the material he was given. You know, I would never say anything bad about him. I think he's a fantastic actor, but he just wasn't given a lot of good stuff to work with here. You know, Eddie Brock as a character, you know, he's the victim of his own downfall, but a lot of the choices he makes are kind of stupid, and it was just a bit boring, honestly. And throughout the whole film, I'll say I did, you know, enjoy it for the most part up until a certain point. You know, I felt like it was watchable up until around about 2/3 of the way through, and then the ending was just so bland and unoriginal and just crap. And it just totally took the whole thing and just said, fuck it. It was as if they were just trying to wrap the film up as quickly as they could without actually providing anything for the future or, you know, any kind of a challenge for the characters. Besides that, the film is actually full of a bunch of plot holes, which I'll leave you guys to find yourselves, because some of them are quite obvious. The biggest problem I had personally was the bad guy. I didn't think he was a particularly good bad guy. It's the same thing we've seen so many times, and I understand it's a comic book hero story, and you know we expect these things to be fairly formulaic. You know, the formula's there for superheroes. You know, bad guy does some bad stuff, good guy. Oh, he tries to beat him, but he can't quite beat him, and then he comes back and he finally beats him and he saves the day. You know, that's the general superhero formula. But you know, you can do that really well. I mean, look at Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok pretty much followed that formula, but still managed to be an absolutely amazing film just through the, you know, the characters being funny, the action scenes being amazing, you know, the different aspects of what they were doing, you know, just all of that. But Venom doesn't really achieve any of that. It all just seems very, very boilerplate. And it just doesn't make for a very exciting film at all. You know, it's essentially businessman is the bad guy, obviously, because he's rich and he's doing crazy science, and he's hurting human beings in his tests. Oh, that makes him evil. Oh, we better stop him. Eddie tries to stop him right at the beginning of the film. Well, he doesn't try and stop him. He just gives him an interview and tries to expose him for his bad stuff. And so he loses his job, even though he was told not to do any of that stuff, which is his own fault. So 6 months go by. That's actually in this film, you know, 6 months later. And Eddie Brock has no job. And the bad guy's still bad guying. He has these alien symbiotes, which he'd gotten from space. And he's experimenting on humans. And so one of the people that's working for him gets a bit sketchy about it, goes to Eddie Brock, and then the whole thing unfolds. It's just very samey. You know, we've seen it all before. You know, in the Spider-Man films, Norman Osborn, the crazy guy who works for a big company or runs a big company, and oh look, he's injected himself with this goblin formula. It's exactly what happens in Venom. And to touch on the fact, of course, that, you know, they've just taken a bunch of characters, thrown them together, which don't really go in the comic books or anything like that. You've got Venom, who's your main guy, and then your bad guy is, what's his name? Carlton Drake, I think it is, the bad guy's called. And when he gets one of the symbiotes on him, it's Riot. And apparently Riot is the leader of the symbiote aliens that are, you know, riding atop this comet or whatever it is. which makes absolutely no fucking sense. That's not what happens in the comic books. It's like they've just taken a random symbiote name, one that they feel they could easily dispose of anyway, and then chucked him into the film. And this is a big spoiler, right? Right at the end, Riot dies. So it's like they used that name just so that they could kill it off. So that when they come to the next film, they don't have to worry about bringing him back. Which is just shit. Now, the ending is where I had the biggest problems with it. You've got your main bad guy, Drake, who gets one of the symbiotes. And this isn't at the beginning of the film, this is right near the end, maybe 20 minutes away from the film actually finishing. He gets the symbiote, it finally catches up with him, and that whole thing where the symbiote has to start in Malaysia and work its way to California, or wherever it is, and then infects Drake. That takes 6 months, apparently, which is a massive plot hole. That whole thing is just stupid. So it's only like 20 minutes right before, the film ends. He gets the Riot thing, and all of a sudden he snaps, he goes nuts. Riot's taken control, and he decides to launch the spaceship, and he wants to go aboard the spaceship. Venom decides to stop him. And then after about 5 minutes of fighting, Riot gets on the spaceship, it's taking off, and then Venom blows the spaceship up. There's a moment when you think Eddie Brock's going to die, but of course he's not going to die, he's the hero. And there was a bit of a fight scene, which wasn't cool at all. Loads of close-ups and things like that. And it was just crap. It was over like that. There was barely any real fight between the symbiote and Riot, and it was just over before it really got going. The whole ending was just bad. It was crap, Of course, it left it open to a sequel because Venom's still alive at the end. But it was just the same old stuff we've seen before. Like I was saying at the beginning of the video, if you've made this film 10 years ago or more, then it probably would have been considered quite good. But by today's standards, with everything that you've got just now, it was really crap. It was just the same old shit. Once again, it was very formulaic. It was very much uncreative. And the lack of Marvel Universe integration, the lack of Spider-Man especially, just meant that they had to dance around far too many things to make it believable. And that's just one of the many reasons why I didn't like it. But one of the other reasons as well is just like the character of Venom is just totally wrong. He decides to not help his alien brothers because he's bonded with Eddie and he likes Eddie, which there's no good reason why he would feel that way, at least not in the film. And it never feels like Eddie Brock is actually in control of anything. It's always like Venom's pulling him around and doing everything and basically controlling Eddie. And it seems the same for Riot when he's on Carlton Drake, which isn't the way they work in the comic books, not really. Although there are some that do that, but not with Venom. So it was just... It didn't feel like it was really a Marvel film. It didn't feel like whoever developed this really knew anything about Venom. Feels like they'd read a couple of comics and decided, yeah, I could write something about that. And there was just no Marvel love in it that you would expect from a Marvel film, and just yet another shit film from Sony, another gutterball by Sony. They're ruining anything that they have that's Marvel. Just driving them into the ground, and they need to just give it up. Sell the rights back to Marvel so Marvel can make these films properly, or bury them where they need to be, because there's absolutely no reason why they needed to make a Venom standalone film, at least not right now, given the fact that he doesn't exist yet, really, in the MCU. And I just think if it had been as part of a Spider-Man film, you could do a Spider-Man film where Venom is the only villain. You don't have to have Venom and the Sandman. You don't have to do that. You could easily make a great Marvel film where Venom is just the villain, just by going by one of the comic books. But they didn't do that, and it sucked. It just really, really sucked. So if I had to rate it on a scale of a turd in the wind to Spider-Man 2, the video game, I'd probably rank it somewhere in the middle, you know, around about Spider-Man 1. You know, it's about as good as Spider-Man 1, not as good as Spider-Man 2, but by today's standards, Spider-Man 1 is shit. So, it's watchable, but nothing special anymore. If this was done 10 years ago, then yeah, it would have been fantastic, but no, nah. I would say watch it on video or watch it on Sky Cinema or something when it comes on there for free, but don't waste your money. Don't go to the cinema to see it because it's just not going to live up to any expectations if you have any. I had none going into this, so I wasn't really that surprised by it, but yeah, it's samey, it's unoriginal, it doesn't make best use of the characters that it could, and yeah, just a flop. Thanks very much for watching. I don't know how much of my point I really got across there. You're better off just watching it yourself because you'll see yourself just why I feel the way I feel about it. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And I hope you guys have yourselves a fantastic day. All right, take care.